Om Bhurabhuvah Svah Tatsaviturbharenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. Continuing my previous topic from the first video, I start the second video. The topic is Maharshi Ramana emphasized more on the self-experience than the scriptures, and he was emphasizing less thinking and more contemplation on the self. So he says that all thinking is out of place as a means of sadhana. So thinking is not the part of sadhana. It is not one's true nature, because thinking is not the true nature of the sadhak. It creates all errors, and what is worst of all, creates, as the father of them, a false entity, the ego or individual being. Individual being, ego, false I am the body idea, root idea, all these indicates that is ego. Concentration is not thinking of one thing. Another misconception of the people is that they think that putting more emphasis or focusing on a single thought is concentration. When the thought comes in the picture, that means we are strengthening the mind, we are strengthening the ego, and that is against the sadhana. So concentration means focusing on the self, not on the thought other than the self. Means we should not focus on the non-self thought. On the contrary, it is excluding all thoughts, since all thoughts obstruct the sense of one's true being. Because thoughts are against the true nature of ours. They are against the real self. All efforts are to be directed simply to removing the veil of ignorance. The Maharshi says that the self is not in books. If it were, anybody might become a sage by study. Also, it is not in any hermitage, and going to live in solitude will not help. Why do you think you are a householder? The similar thought that you are a sannyasin will haunt you even if you go forth as one. So any thought is against the sadhana. That is the basic meaning. Whether you continue in the household or renounce it and go to live in the forest, your mind haunts you. The ego is the source of thought. It creates the body and the world and makes you think of being a householder. If you renounce, it will only substitute the thought of renunciation for that of family, and the environment of the forest for that of the household. But the mental obstacles are always there for you. They even increase greatly in the new surroundings. Change of environment is no help. The one obstacle is the mind, and this must be overcome whether in the home or in the forest. If you can do it in the forest, why not in the home? So why change the environment? Your efforts can be made even now, whatever be the environment. Nor is the self something to be attained at some future date. No one is ever away from his self, and therefore everyone is in fact self realized only. And this is the great mystery. People do not know this and want to realize the self. Realization consists only in getting rid of the false idea that one is not realized. It is not anything new to be acquired. It must already exist, or it would not be eternal, and only what is eternal is worth striving for. That means, to be self-realized, we are not going to get anything new. Whatever our misconceptions and ignorance about the self, we have to remove those misconceptions. What is the misconception? That we are the body. This is a misconception. So we have to remove this misconception. We have to remove the ignorance. If mind, ego, maya, vasanas, they are removed, that's all. We are realized. We are a realized soul. Soul is there, Atma is there. We are not going to get it a new Atma. Atma is already there. That is our very self. So only thing, we have to remove all the misconceptions. We are not getting something, but whatever we are having, we have to remove it. That's all. And that ignorance, we have to remove it. All doctrines are made by the ego and for the ego. The ego flourishes on them. But on the Maharshi's path, the very existence of the ego is denied right from the start, both that of the teacher and that of the taught. There is no ego. If there were, you would have to admit of two selves in you. Therefore, there is no ignorance. If you inquire into the self, ignorance, which is already non-existence, will be found not to exist, and you will say that it has fled. Is there anything in the human body that can be called I? There are mental and vital processes, but investigation reveals no person there to be designated as I. Here, whatever you are talking about I, that is ego. Make sure, not Atma. The negative process consists of intellectually eliminating the not I, so that one can see that he who eliminates everything else cannot eliminate himself. Such intellectual investigation may prepare the way for self-enquiry, but is not the enquiry itself. Visitor. A visitor puts a question to Maharshi. I begin with asking myself, who am I? And eliminate the body as not I, the breath as not I, the mind as not I, but then I am unable to proceed further. Bhagwan replies, well, that is all right so far as the mind goes. Your process is only mental. The truth cannot be directly indicated. That's why this mental process is used. You see, he who eliminates all the not I cannot eliminate the I. In order to be able to say I am not this or I am that, there must be the I to say it. This I is only the ego or the I thought. After the rising up of this I thought, all other thoughts arise. See, this I am the body, this is root thought or the false I. This ego or I thought comes first, then rest all the other thoughts follow the root thought. The I thought is therefore the root thought. It is the first thought. It is the basic thought. If the root is pulled out, the rest is at the same time uprooted. Therefore, seek the root I. Question yourself, who am I? Here, who is the query? Am is the existence, I is the ego. Find out the source of the I. Then all these problems will vanish and the pure self alone will remain. How this ego is removed by just querying about who am I? Because this ego feels hurt, it feels insulted, because this ego is the boss, and if somebody questions its existence, that who is this ego, then it feels insulted, it weakens, and finally it vanishes. Why was the Maharshi so against thought? Why was he not satisfied with mental investigation? Because it cannot see beyond itself. It is created by the ego and therefore cannot pierce to the self underlying the ego. But will its renunciation not result in a mere blank? It can. That is what happens in deep sleep. But it can also result in awakening into pure Sat Chit Ananda, being consciousness bliss. This is what is called a realization. Absence of thought does not mean a blank. There must be someone to be aware of that blank. Knowledge and ignorance pertain only to the mind and are in duality, but the self is beyond them both. It is pure light. There is no need for one self to see another. There are no two selves. What is not self is mere non-self and cannot see the self. The self has no sight or hearing. It lies beyond them, all alone as pure consciousness. Then, does one who has realized the self remain absorbed in pure formless consciousness, obvious of any outer world? He can, that is the state of trance known as Nirvikalpa Samadhi. But he need not. Full and complete realization involves return to formal consciousness also with full perception of the outer world, not as a self-subsistent reality but as a manifestation of the self. The mind and senses can still cognize. When one says that the mind is dead, that means only that it no longer presumes to imagine, create or originate as it formerly did. This is the state the Maharshi was in. It is known as Sahaja Samadhi. To those who have not realized the self, as well as to those who have, the word I refers to the body, but with this difference that for those who have not realized, the I is confined to the body, whereas for those who have realized the self within the body, the I shines as the limitless self-thing. To those who have not realized, as well as to those who have, the world is real. But to those who have not realized, truth is adapted to the measure of the world, whereas to those who have, truth shines as the formless perfection and as the substratum of the world. This is all the difference between them. Why is the Maharshi so insistent against the ego? because the ego is the usurper that claims to be the self, the mask that conceals the reality. Its elimination is the only way to realization of the true self that underlies it. The seeker has no alternative. There can be no chick unless the eggshell is broken. The true self cannot be realized until the false is renounced. Therefore, the Maharshi says, since this is ultimately necessary, why not start with it straightway? Since you must finally remain as the self, why not do so from the start? Since other paths will lead you round about and finally face you with the alternative of the self or pseudo self, why not go direct and face it here and now? This is the direct method. All other methods are practiced while retaining the ego, and therefore many doubts arise, and the ultimate question still remains to be tackled in the end. But in this method, the final question is the only one and is raised from the very beginning. This method is self-enquiry. Because every kind of path except self-enquiry presupposes the retention of the mind as the instrument for following it and cannot be followed without the mind. The ego may take different and more subtle forms at different stages of one's practice, but it is never destroyed. The attempt to destroy the ego or the mind by methods other than self-enquiry is like a thief turning policeman to catch the thief, that is himself. Self-enquiry alone can reveal the truth that neither the ego nor the mind really exist and enable one to realize the pure, undifferentiated being of the self or the absolute. Many hesitate and find this method too harsh because of all renunciations. This seems to them the most severe, renouncing not merely enjoyment but him who desire and enjoy it. But this is a wrong idea. If it were true, a self-realized man such as the Maharshi would be the most miserable of men, whereas in fact he is the most happy in pure, unbroken, unalloyed happiness, regardless of whether outer circumstances seem favorable or unfavorable. This is because in renouncing the ego, one really renounces nothing except a wrong conception of I, an error whose removal reveals the eternal truth and unalloyed happiness that is one's real nature. The individual being which identifies its existence with that of the life in the physical body as I is called the ego. The self, which is pure consciousness, has no ego sense about it. Neither can the physical body which is inert in itself have this ego sense. Between the two, that is, between the self or pure consciousness and the inert physical body, there arises mysteriously the ego sense of I notion, the hybrid which is neither of them, and this flourishes as an individual being. The ego or individual being is at the root of all that is futile and undesirable in life. Therefore, it is to be destroyed by any possible means than that whichever is alone remains resplendent. This is the liberation or enlightenment or self-realization. It is to remove this error that the Maharshi prescribes the inquiry, who am I, from the very start. He had no graded methods, nor did he grade his disciples according to seniority. Progress was an inner state which only he perceived. The aspirant is expected to understand that he does not know his self, to investigate into it in order to find out what it really is. He must see, I am possessed of a wrong view of I. I am a slave of a pseudo I. I should not take him for the real I or lend him that name. This tragedy of wrong thinking has brought on me the sickness of wrong I. The Maharshi has prescribed the right medicine to cure me. I am under the spell of the ego which has hypnotized and enslaved me. I myself gave it to the power to do so by thoughtlessly bestowing my I sense on it. By doing so, I am helping it to rob me of my very self. Indeed, the Maharshi often refer to the story of King Janaka, who on attaining realization exclaimed, Now I have caught the thief who has been robbing me all these years. Why do I thus misplace my I sense? Because I take sense perceptions for true. I have to learn to realize the true I which underlies mind and senses and the whole objective world. Man's mind and senses are used to cognize objective things, but this talent is of no use for knowing the self, in which there is no trace of objectivity. One cannot have a vision of the self or know the self as one knows another, because that would imply two selves in you, one to know the other. You speak of a vision of Shiva, but a vision always presumes an object. That implies the existence of a subject. The value of the vision is the same as that of the seer. That is to say, the nature of the vision is on the same plane as that of the seer. A vision of God is only a vision of the self, objectified as the God of your particular faith. What you have to do is to know the self. And to know the self is only to know, to be aware, to be. Devotee asks a question. When I seek the I see nothing. Bhagavan says, you say that because you are accustomed to identify yourself with the body and sight with the eyes, but what is there to be seen? And by whom? And how? There is only one consciousness, and this, when it identifies itself with the body, projects itself through the eyes and sees the surrounding object. The individual is limited to the waking state. He expects to see something different and accepts the authority of his senses. He will not admit that he who sees the object seen and the acts of seeing are all manifestations of the same consciousness, the I. Self-enquiry helps to overcome the illusion that the self is something to see. How do you recognize yourself now? Do you have to hold a mirror up in front of yourself to recognize yourself? The awareness is itself the I. Realize it, and that is the truth. However, the ego is engrossed with seeing, hearing, feeling, and objective knowing. It values these functions and considers them as belonging to the self. Blinded by this view, one does not experience the brilliance of the true I. One's attention is to be drawn away from such objective perceptions to that with respect to which there is unknowingness. If that were known and experienced as it is, it would be recognized as one's very self, and then the false I would fade out. The outer man is unreal and should be made passive, a mere recipient of impressions. Self-enquiry helps to do this. The journey is inwards through territory unknown to the senses. So long as life remains, one should strive to reach one's source. This is the only worthy aim in life, the only goal worth seeking, the only use of life that can put an end to suffering and frustration and reveal the pure bliss, the radiant consciousness, the unruffled being that one really is. The weapon for doing this on the Maharshi's path is concentration on the I sense. This sense is about Atma. This is not like other thoughts that come and go and can be dismissed at all. One's attention must be constantly drawn to the feeling of pure awareness, pure consciousness of I amness, that is Atma. At first, this can be done only during concentrated sessions of the self-inquiry, known loosely as meditation. But later, the awareness of I amness becomes an undercurrent underlying all one's activities. This I sense is thus sent by tracing which to its source one reaches the self, as a dog tracks out its master. Am I worse than a dog? Steadfastly will I track these out and regain thee, O Arunachala. First of the 5 hymns to Arunachala, verse 39. The Maharshi says that if one earnestly seeks the I, the false I vanishes, leaving only the true to shine in all its pristine glory. His teaching is based on his own experience, not on learning or reasoning, and nothing he says is for the sake of argument. What can be more heartening to the traveler on the mountain path? So, dear friends, this is a very, very nice explanation of self-enquiry. Self-enquiry, just do not think that who am I is a mantra. No. Who am I? Just it is the questioning. The ego is questioning itself that who am I? Who am I? That means this is the way this ego will be eliminated. Because when the question is put to the ego that who are you means who am I? So this ego is completely, insulted, feels insulted, and it will become very weak, and a stage comes, it is eliminated. When this ego is eliminated, that is the basic thought is eliminated. What is that basic thought? I am the body. Because rest all other thoughts also will be eliminated. Because the thoughts which follow this root thought, they will be eliminated along with the basic root I thought, false I, ego. So this is a very good explanation by Maharshi. So my dear friend, thank you for watching and listening this very, very useful video. Please comment, like and share the video and subscribe my channel. Thank you, my dear friends. Thank you.